being emotionally neglected is trauma. Not being seen or heard or validated is trauma. Having any of your physical, emotional, psychological, or spiritual needs not met is trauma. Hello, and we are back with the first Rise episode of season 8 here on the Reconditioned podcast with me, Lauren Vaknin. And I'm just loving right now, as I'm recording this, it's the 1st of September, and you can just noticeably feel the change in seasons. I can see the change in the light, and it's really lovely going into autumn. More so because this year we've had such an amazing summer here in the UK. Usually I don't look forward to autumn so much because I feel like I haven't had enough time to warm up. So this year we really did have some good weather. So it's just lovely just watching kind of the change in the atmosphere, the change in nature, how everything looks different, how the sun feels different. So I was just observing that out my window right now. But so that's where we're at. And so this episode, so it's interesting because I used to think that listeners just wanted guests and great guests and more guests, but the episodes that I get the most incredible and consistent feedback about are these Rise episodes. So I'm so glad that they resonate with you. Feel free to get in touch and let me know any topics you'd like me to talk about. And as usual, I gracefully ask for an exchange of energy in this respect. So if you feel like you gain anything from this podcast, please make a choice to pay it forward by rating and reviewing the podcast on Apple or Spotify. When the more reviews and ratings it gets, it gets seen in more people's news feeds if they're not watching it, if they or listening to it. If they listen to similar things, it has more of a chance of coming up for them to see. So you're helping other people to find it. And in other housekeeping news, if you have not yet seen my new website, I have done this for you guys. So I previously had 2 websites and it was making everything really confusing. One was the blog with all my recipes and articles and everything. And then the other one was my coaching stuff. And I wanted it all in one space. But more than that, the thing I get asked the most about, or that I get the most messages about, is product recommendations. So I did have a page for this on the old website, but it wasn't great. It wasn't very user-friendly. So my team have spent hours and hours on developing this. So it is really easily navigable and user-friendly for you guys when you're looking for a recommendation of any sort. And I am talking everything from supplements to books to health tech, everything, and categories like immune health, gut, detox, pregnancy, children, etc., aging, hormones, whatever you can think of, there's a category for it. I spent hours myself, obviously, getting all the links of all my favorite products that I've discovered over the years. And we've just basically collated them and put them in one place so that it's easy for you to find. So check that out. Check out all the categories. Every time you need anything, you only have to visit there. Huge shout out to Alex and Claire and Kim for putting this together for me. But yeah, literally everything you could ever want is in there. So go to laurenvaknin.co.uk/LV-recommends, or just go to laurenvaknin.co.uk and just click on the LV recommends page. And I'll also pop it in the show notes for you. And of course, don't forget to get yourself registered for my free live Uncover Your Purpose training series on starting at the beginning of November. So I'll link that in the show notes. This is going to be the hugest free live training that I've ever done to uncover your purpose. It'll be running over 3 days. And it's going to be immense. So if you want to get some of what I've got for free, then register for that and make sure to show up live. It's far enough in advance that you can put it in your diaries. Okay, so inner child healing. I could not say this more emphatically. There is no healing until you heal your inner child, period. Whether you're healing from trauma or health challenges or even a negative mindset or bad habits, you literally cannot heal them fully until you've done the work on your inner child. It goes hand in hand with trauma work, and it is the cornerstone of well-being. And the reason that so many people who are doing everything to heal their bodies but still fall short, despite feeling that they've done everything they possibly can to heal, is usually because they have not healed their inner child. So even if you think your issues and challenges began as an adult and your childhood was fine, the way you were raised would have fed into how you manage and created the situations you're dealing with as an adult. So how do I heal my inner child? I hear you asking. So for me, I have put it down to there being two facets to inner child healing, which is what I teach in my coaching, that make up the body of this work. And those are, number one, uncovering any trauma and conditioning that took you out of being your authentic self. And two, reparenting yourself once you've done that. So let's go into number one. There are three camps. There are the people who are aware that they suffered trauma as a child, or at least acknowledge that little t trauma shaped them. There's the ones who think that their childhoods were perfect and there couldn't possibly be anything in their childhood that is considered trauma or that could need healing. And then there are the ones who know their childhood wasn't the best, but they don't consider it trauma or worthy of healing, or that it could possibly be the reason why they're sick or have low self-worth or make shitty relationship or career or money choices. And the majority of people I speak to or work with fall into this camp, believe it or not. I have actually had clients mention things like one of their parents leaving when they were a toddler, or being left at 6 years old to cook dinner for her and her siblings while her mum was out doing drugs, or having to be on guard all the time because even though her mum was nice to her and loved her, she was an alcoholic, or being born prematurely and being in an incubator for the first 6 weeks of her life and not being held by her parents, or not ever being shown how to access emotions because nothing like that was ever spoken about and you just had to pretend to be okay all the time. The list is endless. But here's what you need to hear. All these things are trauma. Being emotionally neglected is trauma. Not being seen or heard or validated is trauma. Having any of your physical, emotional, psychological, or spiritual needs not met is trauma. And that has to be healed. Okay, so one of the challenges I hear from you guys the most is how hard it is to drop into meditation or even to relax and just feel calm. And you know I speak a lot here about how our bodies have not evolved to manage the level of stress we're faced with today, which means we're constantly in fight or flight mode with our sympathetic nervous systems always activated, which we know leads to depression and anxiety and also chronic health problems. If we want to be well, we have to find ways to mitigate this. We have to do that ourselves. And I believe in merging natural daily practices with the kind of health tech that enables us to counter and mitigate the challenges that modern life throws at us. And the Sensate is one of those products, and I want to tell you about it. So the Sensate is a small palm-sized device that sends infrasonic waves through the chest in order to activate the vagus nerve and calm the autonomic nervous system, which is the body's command center. Together with the specially composed hemispheric audio within the app, you will literally feel calmer after only a short session. I give this to anyone I'm with if I have it on me, which I usually do, and everyone has the same response. It's amazing, and I already feel less stress, and where can I get one? Now, I'm particularly recommending the Sensate to anyone who suffers from anxiety and wants to help calm the nervous system, those who want to deepen their meditation practice, and people who are looking for ways to be calmer and more grounded. Now, most of you know I work with a shaman, and he has taught me that our higher intelligence places ideas of health technology in the minds of those who can create and invent these products. And I truly believe this to be the case with things like the Aura Ring, the Somavedic, even diagnostic devices in hospital. And for me, I believe that to be true with the Sensate. We have lived for too long in a high stress state. We need more to help us counter that. So you can get £20 off the Sensate by visiting getsensate.com. That's GETSENSATE.com and using the code Lauren20. That's getsensate.com and the code Lauren20. Thank you to Sensate for partnering with Reconditioned. And now back to the episode. Now, we all would have had both big T and little t traumas that need healing. And I'll give you some examples of my own so you can start gathering in your mind the sort of situations that require healing that you might not have ever considered before as something that actually requires inner child work. So my big T traumas mostly revolved around my health, of course. I grew up with an illness and I was different to the other kids. And that in itself was a trauma. And it only took me until my early 30s to realize that that was a trauma that I had to heal. Or medical procedures I had to have. So those are pretty obvious. And yet still, I really didn't realize I needed to go back and create healing around these. So there were those. But then there's the more subtle but insidious ones that would be considered little T traumas. And these are the ones that have come up to bite me over the years. So things like realizing I never went on a holiday without being in pain. So my brain would initiate pain or illness on holidays, even after I'd been in remission for a while, as a trauma response. Or being so highly sensitive and my family all being different to that and not understanding my need to resolve arguments fully. And then they'd laugh at me. Or how I couldn't understand why people in the world suffered so much when I saw the news, and I'd get depressed about things like the Romanian orphans or the starving African children or the Gulf War. And I'm talking like 6, 7 years old. This stuff affected me deeply, and I'd have nightmares about it. And just in my day-to-day life, it would be on a loop in my brain. And it would literally eat me up, but no one would understand me or why these things bothered me so much. So it was ignored, and this ate away at me, and this turned into anxiety, which is not something I even had any terminology for as a child. When I think about how it felt now and the physical sensations, which is what we should always do to try and heal something, think about the physical sensation and how the emotion is affecting you physically. When I think about that, I can see that it was absolutely anxiety. So we need to be understood by our parents, regardless of how different we are to them, and to be responded to in the way that aligns with our own authenticity in order to be able to grow up stable. So examples for you might be, maybe you got good grades in school, and the more you saw how this pleased your parents, the more you believed that your value was based on your scholastic ability. So you'd continue working really hard at school to gain that recognition, and then not see your worth outside of that. And maybe you're one of the many people who grew up to be an adult with low self-worth, because who are you once you finished education if that was the one thing that validated your existence as a child? So whether you suffered abuse or neglect, or whether you suffered from any of the myriad little T traumas that took away your sense of self-worth and deservingness and value, whatever they are, they need to be healed. So the first step of inner child healing is to recognize and pinpoint these big T and little t traumas. Now, in the Recondition Your Life Academy, there's a whole process for uncovering these step by step, which obviously it's impossible to go through here, but of course you can get your name on the waiting list for the Recondition Your Life Academy online course, which launches in a couple of months. And you can do that on the website or by going to the show notes, because we go deep. I'm talking deep into inner child work there to uncover it all so that we can heal it. So that's the first step, uncovering and just recognizing your traumas, recognizing the things that took you out of feeling fully safe or fully accepted or fully understood. Like, did you feel you had to be something else to be accepted? Could you show up completely and absolutely authentically? Most of us couldn't. And as tribal evolutionary beings, we are wired to fit in and want to be accepted. So we change ourselves, we adapt ourselves, we contort ourselves to make that happen. Because 50,000 years ago, if we weren't accepted by the tribe, we would die. End of. So our reptilian and even mammalian brains are initiating that response for us. That is what evolution has done for us to keep us in survival, to keep us surviving, but we don't want to be surviving or in survival mode. We want to be thriving. And that's what this work gets to, shifting our brains from that mechanism of just always being in survival mode, the evolutionary survival mode, where we're just always running on the sympathetic nervous system, into thriving, into remaining as much as we can in the parasympathetic. So then all the decisions we make as adults are based on this. And this is what I mean when I talk about trauma-based responses. So if you had a parent that was an alcoholic, even if they never hit you and they loved you and they cared for you and they were functioning and all that stuff, there would have been a consistent underlying tone of instability. And children need stability. They need to know that no matter what, you are there. They are protected and nothing will get in the way of that. And when you grow up with that underlying tone of instability, it's with a constant anxiety about how unsafe you are. Children need to be fully confident in their safety. So how this might present as an adult is you might be in a relationship that isn't what you know you want for your life. Like it's fine, it doesn't have to be abusive, but it's just, you could do better. But you don't leave because it offers stability, and your brain has been wired, programmed to grab onto anything that offers you stability. So your reason for staying in your relationship is a trauma response. If you had abusive parents and you're doing all you can to be the best parent you can for your kids, because this is based on trauma, you might be over mollycoddling them, or maybe you're too tough on them. These are trauma responses. Or maybe you're codependent in relationships, or maybe you're a workaholic because growing up your parents didn't have enough money and you felt the instability of that. Your unconscious decision to be a workaholic is a trauma response. So obviously I could go on for hours, but I'm sure you can see how many examples of these there are. Now the key is working backwards to find out what inner child traumas you have and journaling them day in, day out, really getting granular with them. I have an inner child meditation on YouTube, and that can also help you to go through this work, and I'll link that in the show notes too. And the more you do this, the more your subconscious will open up and allow those memories to come through. That's where we want to be. We need to be opening ourselves up to the little t traumas, the things that happened to us that took us out of being our authentic selves. Allow our subconscious to bring those through to us so we can recognize them now. So once we've recognized them one by one, with each one that we recognize, the next step is then reparenting our inner child. So we found the memories and the traumas, and now we need to acknowledge our inner child as an actual person, as a being. So when you imagine your inner child, what age comes up? At any age is fine. Your subconscious will show you what it needs to, and you work with that age. Now, of course, you can change at any time and start spending time in meditation, giving your inner child everything they weren't given growing up, wherever their needs weren't met, meeting them for your inner child yourself. So again, in the academy, we go deep into this work, and I explain that part of inner child healing is the reprogramming. Now, this doesn't mean we're just imagining a new childhood. Reprogramming works by imagining it through repetition. And by doing that, we're using neuroplasticity to rewire the neural pathways in the brain that reprogram the associated limiting belief. So we're re-imprinting an experience that initiated a negative behavior pattern. So when it feels like you're just imagining improved versions of your parents, it's so much more than that. You're reprogramming what wasn't supporting you then in order to heal now. And another thing that I find it really important to be clear about here, that a lot of people have concerns about, is that this doesn't mean that you're disrespecting your parents. You might have had wonderful parents that you love, and they still didn't meet all your needs, because very, very few parents do. And it's okay for us to reprogram that so we can operate optimally in life. And you might also feel guilty doing this work if one or both of your parents have passed. Again, inner child healing is an integral part of life optimization. So if you want to heal, you have to give yourself permission to fully immerse yourself in this practice. We're not putting any blame on our parents. We're not shaming them or blaming them for anything. Most parents did the very best they knew how, even if that wasn't good enough. They were themselves operating from their own trauma and conditioning, and we can't change that. Nor do we want to, because the trauma we experienced has shaped us and helped us to heal more deeply. but we can and should heal it moving forward, which in turn will mean that we stop these behaviors and create a life of ease and wholeness. And if we have children ourselves, of course, it means that we're then stopping these patterns now and not passing them on any further. So it is integral work. So I want you to give yourself full permission to enter into this process completely. You don't even need to tell your parents you're doing this. This isn't for them to right their wrongs. This is your journey. This is for you to heal. Only we can take responsibility for our healing. Only we can heal ourselves. Now, of course, I've had clients where things have cropped up that they felt they wanted to bring that to their parents. And if you feel that is right, that's okay. But just remember that it is up to you to heal, not them. Even if they did cause you harm. This is your journey. As a being, you chose this life and you chose it for the lessons you would learn that would help you evolve more fully as a cosmic being. So to recap, you will spend time uncovering all the many memories and traumas and conditioning that could have caused you to operate from trauma responses and took you out of your authenticity. And you'll journal them as much as you can. Anytime another one comes up, letting yourself write for as long as you need to in order to really get to the bottom of it. And know that it never stops, okay? Once you open this Pandora's box, you'll give your subconscious permission to keep showing you more things that need healing. I am 20 years down the line in this work, and still when something happens to me, I go within to see if there's anything from my inner child that needs healing in order for this situation to be healed. And every time something else comes up. So then you'll do the inner child meditation and reprogram whatever needs to be reprogrammed. And then you'll reparent your inner child. So in your everyday life, check in with your inner child often. What do they need? How can you support them? Give them a hug. Tell them it will be okay. Because it will. And make them feel supported and loved fully. Once you've acknowledged the traumas themselves, that is a huge part of the energetic process. But as we know with trauma, there's no use just uncovering it and talking about it. It has to be released from the body to finish off the stress cycle. So if you are in that place and something comes up when you're doing inner child work, you can get support from a coach or a therapist or even a somatic bodywork practitioner or somatic experiencing practitioner to help you fully release it from the body and then continue to support your inner child. I will put some recommendations for that in the show notes as well. So that is pretty much inner child work, inner child healing in a nutshell. Now, don't forget, if you want to go more deeply into this work, this is what the Recondition Your Life Academy online course is about. And inner child healing is actually the first of the 12 modules. Again, it launches in November and you can get your name on the waiting list by heading to the show notes and clicking the link. And make sure to register for the free training series because I'll be taking you through how to do these practices in person. When I say in person, I mean remotely, but live. So you can really start this process. Okay, my lovelies, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for being here. Go make your life happen. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reconditioned. I am honestly so grateful to each and every person that tunes in. Thank you also for taking responsibility for your own well-being. You should know that just by choosing to listen to podcasts like this that further your well-being, you're moving more deeply into abundance consciousness. Now, don't forget, I have a bunch of free resources over at laurenvakneen.co.uk, as well as every recommendation you could ever need in regards to your well-being on the LV Recommends page, all categorized for your ease. Thank you also to our sponsors. These episodes would not be possible without them, so make sure to check them out and get some pretty awesome discounts on the show notes. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get updated each time a new one is released. Thank you. I appreciate you. Reconditioned is proud to be working with Women for Women International, a charity that supports women survivors of war in 8 war-torn countries around the world. You can help a woman survivor of war transform her life today by visiting womenforwomen.org.uk/donate.